Auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Astaghfirullah rabbi min kulli zambin wa atubu ilayhi. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning into PTV World. You watching World this morning. Alongside the very white Shahzad Hassan Khan and the very red Shiza Hashmi. Hello Shiza, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Thank you so much for asking. Alhamdulillah. Hope you're doing fine as well.
Alhamdulillah.
I love the fact that sometimes even coincidentally, we always do end up sort of contrasting.
Yeah.
And I think that is the unspoken chemistry we have built over the past 3 years now that we've been doing the show as well.
I think probably, we have done so many shows together that, one way or the other, I believe that it's just in our head that this is something which you're going to wear and I'm particularly going to match, because in the recent events and in the recent days, all I've witnessed is that, every single day, okay, not every single day, I might be probably exaggerating about it as well, but we are contrasting or we are matching as well, which I believe is great for viewers on screen as well. So ladies and gentlemen, please do let us know, if you think that, that our contrast or probably our chemistry or probably the way we dress up is good, please write to us. We'll feel great about that.
No, definitely. We love hearing from you. And I keep mentioning this every other day, Shahzad, that this is... I cannot think myself doing any other job in the world. So this is, while it is our responsibility, of course, it is our pleasure to come every morning, share our mornings with you, talk to you, spread our information, and, well, just enjoy this bit.
Yeah, well, that's great. But, Shahzad, today I have a very interesting question to ask, before we get started.
More than interesting, I think it's going to be confusing.
Well, it's not going to be confusing, but I believe that, it's a different question. You might not have got this one before as well. So let's see. Because I know you, on screen, I know you off screen as well. You know me on screen, you know me off screen as well. So this is how I speak.
Okay.
Even if I'm on screen or even if I'm off screen, this is how I'm going to talk, right?
I know where
but
this is going.
Is it the same way with you, while you're on television, the way you speak, or, when you're not on television, when you're not on air, do you speak the same way?
I think you can tell me better. How can I tell?
This is what I wanted to ask, because I think that there's a bit of difference.
In my accent, is that?
No, it's not the accent. It's just the way we say it, it's just the way we behave on screen.
Of course.
Off screen, we are more relaxed. Probably on air, I'll be like, hey, what's happening? What are you doing? And things like that. But you're like, gee.
That is because, mashallah, you have about 13-ish years of experience in this industry, and I think you feel like you belong. While in my case, I feel like every other day is... Well, it's formal for me, definitely. Although I do aspire to be as relaxed as you are at work as well, inshallah, sooner as well. But Shahzad, we have to share something so sweet. We came across it on the internet, of course, and our hearts just immediately melted, and we were in conversation, or the entire team, we were like, we have to talk about it. Exactly. If we cannot get the people on board or on the show, at least let's share the story.
Exactly.
So here's the thing, because of the pandemic, unfortunately, a lot of students were not going to school. True. Well, luckily for all of those people who were going to appear in exams, first of all, they have been postponed till the end of the year. So
I guess everybody's happy about that.
Everyone's happy about that. But here's the thing. So for all the primary and the secondary school students, especially, the parents were sort of, well, they were tired of the fact that they're at home and they're not studying, and also frustrated the fact that they're wasting their time and not getting educated. Yeah. So areas like Balochistan actually are home to a lot of brilliant-minded people who came up with a brilliant idea.
Imagine who's coming up for the rescue, ladies and gentlemen, because, everything's under a lockdown, everything's being shut as well. So Roshan the camel is actually going places, making sure Roshan the camel is actually acting like a mobile library for everybody out there, in Balochistan, who cannot go to their schools because of the lockdown. So the schools have been shut down. So the Roshan the camel, early in the morning, starts going to different places, taking the books of for other children out there, so that they can study, and then kids gather around Roshan and kind of study. So I believe Roshan knows what the kind of work he's doing, or the kind of magnificent job he's doing, making sure that the future of Pakistan is actually going to study, and they're not going to waste any time, even in this distressful time.
And Shahzad, what's even more sweet, oh my God, my heart's still warm. Here's the thing. So one of the principals of the public schools over there actually came up with the idea when she felt like, people have to learn, right? So it's basically a collab between one of the publishing, I don't know what we call publishers, along with publications, sorry, along with the school. So what they do is the camel Roshan, the library itself, actually walks to different villages and stays there for 3-ish hours. And the students are so really excited for this. They dress up actually like they do for school, just to go to Roshan and get a book, and then they can return it the next time when Roshan comes back. I think it's
whoever's
really nice.
behind this idea, ladies and gentlemen, I believe that they've done a phenomenal job, and that too because, we've done a lot of shows where we talk about, how situation is in rural areas, how, girls cannot actually go to schools because they're
Yes.
not, equipped properly for girls to actually go and study as well. So imagine if the school's coming to your home. I believe that it's brilliant. And that too, on a camel, if you get your library, wow, that's brilliant. So whoever's behind that, kudos, you've done a great job. And you definitely it looks like, I mean, it's very apparent that, people within Balochistan are actually destined to make sure that they're not going to waste any time and make sure that their kids are going to study and be that brilliant future of Pakistan. Alhamdulillah.
Absolutely, because Shazad, right now, because of the pandemic as well, education is not just the only thing which has been disrupted. A lot of people, even hundreds of people around us, Shazad,
Yeah.
our friends of friends, family, they are unemployed, laid off either, or sort of given an indefinitive leave from
Yeah.
work because of the pandemic, of course.
Yeah.
There are so many reasons that offices and companies cannot operate to their full capacity, but the amount of burden, of course, that is given to the employees is one thing. The sort of stress, I want to say, that they might have, again, that is not the only one. It's not just due to the pandemic. There are so many different reasons for why employees at work, or generally anyone at work, might have their life disrupted.
Exactly, and it's, we shouldn't actually even be using the word might, because it definitely did had an impact as well, ladies and gentlemen. And, today I actually wanted to speak about, today, obviously, it's a very important day, ladies and gentlemen, because we are actually observing World Health and Safety Day. So
At
in
workplace.
that particular context, before we move on to what the theme is and what we kind of need to converse or need to kind of have or talk about, what I wanted to say over here today was that, for all of those people who've employed, hundreds and 200 or 300 or 500 people in their companies for the last 20 or 25 years, and all of those people have been working hard day in, day night, 24/7, 365 days a year. Imagine that all of a sudden when, there was a little bit of impact just at the beginning, when the pandemic broke out, everybody, majority of the staff was laid off.
Yes.
Now imagine that for somebody who's been rendering their services for their company for the
so
last
long.
20 years and making sure that the company is profitable, all of a sudden they get to know that, hey, you know what, you laid off, go back home, and if we require you, we'll actually call you back. So imagine what kind of morals do people who own companies have or employers have, number one. Number two, whenever we talk about health and safety, there's very less awareness about health and safety within corporate organizations or private organizations or probably public organizations
At any
as well.
workplace.
I mean, we're very lucky that over here at PTV, majority of the people who are regular staff, their medical is covered, medical for their parents is covered, and, a lot of people can actually go to dentist for free, which obviously is a perk. But I really need to get back on this as well, whether dentistry is free or not. But imagine that people over here have been looking after each and every employee. Imagine that there were mass testing which took place over here, even at PTV centers. That means that PTV is actually looking after their employees.
Absolutely, and this is the need of the hour. We need to talk about it, of course. We will definitely. And Shazad, a lot of people lose their lives at their workplaces. Of course, different backgrounds, different type of workspaces, whatnot, but they lose their life and sometimes contract diseases, especially in this pandemic, it is very evident. And, all those sort of uncertainties and all those unfortunate events that have been happening to employees sort of come together to combine a global 3% of GDP loss. In terms of course, there's an economic burden that the countries have to take. Here's a small report of what this day is about. Let's take a look at it. When we come back, we have a very apt guest who will, well, let us know more about it.
Shed light on it.
Yes.
Good morning.
The annual World Day for Safety and Health at Work promotes the prevention of occupational accidents and diseases globally. It is an awareness-raising campaign intended to focus international attention on the magnitude of the problem and how promoting and creating a safety and health culture can reduce the number of work-related deaths and injuries. The World Day for Safety and Health at Work theme for 2021, as set by the International Labour Organization, is Anticipate, Prepare and Respond to Crisis and Invest Now in Resilient Occupational Safety and Health Systems. The theme acknowledges the impact that the global COVID-19 pandemic has had on our working lives and the importance of building an effective, resilient and adaptable work and health safety framework. Work health and safety risk management can be as simple as a discussion with your workers or involve specific risk analysis tools and techniques developed for specific risks or recommended by safety professionals. For some complex situations, expert or specialists' advice may be useful. The pandemic has touched nearly every aspect of the world of work, from the risk of transmission of the virus in workplaces to occupational safety and health risks that have emerged as a result of measures to mitigate the spread of the virus. We have learned from past crises that workplaces can be of vital importance to prevent and control outbreaks. Adequate safety and health measures at work can play a crucial role in containing the spread of the disease while protecting workers and society at large. Governments, employers and workers all have a role to play in tackling COVID-19 crisis, and their collaboration is key.
Anticipate, prepare, and respond to crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the theme that we are looking at, when we speak about World Health and Safety Day. And in addition to that, it is about investing in resilient and occupational safety and healthcare systems as well. So to talk about that, ladies and gentlemen, we're lucky that we have been actually joined by a health and safety expert. He happens to be Mr. Abdullah Khan. Hello, assalamu alaikum, good morning, how are you?
Walaikum assalam, good morning to you too.
Thank you very much for joining us. Wonderful to have you, and we'll definitely come back to you in like another 2 minutes as well. Where,
Thank you
ladies
for
and
your
gentlemen,
patience.
everybody out there knows that we start our day with a Naat as well. So we are lucky that we've actually been joined by Naat over here in the studios with us, and he happens to be Professor Shahid Hassan Saab. Hello sir, assalamu alaikum, subah bakhair, good morning.
Walaikum assalam, bahut shukriya.
How are you sir?
Alhamdulillah.
Thank you very much for joining us. Sir, kya sunayenge?
Thank you. Allama Iqbal rahmatullahi alayhi ka kalam.
Bismillah.
Lauh bhi tu, kalam bhi tu, tera wujud al-kitab, gumbad aabgi narang, تیرے محیط میں حباب لوح بھی تو قلم بھی تو عالم آب و خاک میں عالم آب و خاک میں تیرے ظہور سے ذرائے ریگ کو دیا تو نے طلوع آفتاب لوح بھی تو قلم بھی تو شوق تیرا اگر نہ ہو میری نماز کا امام شوق تیرا اگر نہ ہو میری نماز کا امام میرا قیام بھی मेरा सुजूद भी जाब लोह भी तू कलम भी तू
जज़ाकल्लाह बहुत शुक्रिया जज़ाकल्लाह बहुत खूबसूरत और बड़ा मुनफरिद अंदाज है आपका माशाल्लाह नात ख्वानी का तो बहुत अच्छा लगा जज़ाकल्लाह
The other day, Sandhu Saab told me that after someone recites a beautiful naat, you have to say Tabarakallah. So
Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah.
Yes.
So I think I've probably tick marked everything. Tabarakallah,
Jazakallah, mashallah.
Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah,
Very
and
nice.
Mashallah. Now coming back to World Health and Safety Day as well. So Abdullah bhai, first of all, significance of this day, and then we'll move down to the kind of laws we have in place, what people really need to know. So let's get this conversation started.
Yeah, so I think the significance of this day, so it's extremely important that we have to understand as a society that what health and safety, and specifically occupational health and safety means. It is basically health and safety. If you look at it, I'm talking about it in a non-technical manner. See?
All right.
If you look at it from a humanitarian perspective, so it is enshrined in the fundamental and basic human rights.
All right.
Any just and humane society, where people are supposed to thrive, where people are supposed to feel safe and prosper, it has to be based around the well-being, protection, and safety of the people.
Right. That makes sense.
And,
Yes.
and the same principle applies to any workplace. So workplace does not mean a physical workplace. Also, another very important aspect, and we were having this conversation before the program also, is that it is not just disease. So disease and illness is one part of it, and specifically in the COVID context, so it is a very relevant and a direct part of it. But it's the psychological well-being also, and that is the most ignored part, which you were touching upon in your opening also.
Exactly.
A sense of being deprived, exploitation, reasonable working conditions, which includes minimum wages and social protection like healthcare, education. This is the basic fundamentals. And so we are in the month of Ramadan. These principles, they are also enshrined in our religion.
Of course.
So the Prophet, peace be upon him, he sallallahu alaihi wasallam emphasized a lot on the well-being and or taking care of the people that are working for you, your workers.
Right.
So in modern day terminologies, those are direct injunctions,
Yes.
specifying, emphasizing on the well-being and protection of your workers.
Exactly. And thank you very much for saying that as well. And thank you very much on kind of, building up on what we were actually sharing with our viewers in the opening as well. Now let's talk about, the mental well-being, because whenever we talk about well-being, it is physical, your mental, your spiritual as well. That's what World Health Organization says. So now bringing somebody to workplace, and imagine that over in Pakistan, I really cannot say it, with my 100% knowing that, that there might be somebody who might not be doing this as well. So there's 0.1% of chance that they might not be doing it. But other than that, politics is, one of those things which I don't think any institution is not filled with, or people over there are not habitual of doing. Number one. Number two, people will take credit for the work which they have not done, probably their juniors did, so, and there's so many things, you keep on going, and, there's so many people who are being posted just because of the fact that somebody said something to the boss, favorism for that matter, and then, obviously gender diversity for that matter as well. Let's build up on this. Let's educate people that, hey, you know what, you really do not have to feel insecure about your job.
Yes.
Make sure that you do not send somebody else back home just because of the fact that you were incompetent.
Yes, yes. I think it's also equally important. It is as important as your physical well-being. So your psychological well-being, your sense of security at workplace, and it has many dimensions. So like you mentioned, so discrimination is a very important factor. Nepotism can be devastating. Then exploitation. So reasonable pay for equal work.
Yeah.
So that's a fundamental principle that is documented in our constitution and subordinate legislations. But actually the thing is, guys, no amount of documentation, no amount of legislation, can be effective if it is not adopted and if it is not executed.
Implemented, yeah.
But let's talk about the legislation. What does it say?
So if you start from the very basics, so right to safety, protection from all sorts of discrimination, including harassment, entitlement to reasonable pay, minimum wages, right to education, right to health care.
And you're talking Pakistan specific?
Pakistan's constitution. So all of these are extended and given to every citizen of Pakistan so as fundamental rights. So
they're supposed to be given.
So mind you, these fundamental rights are the supreme part. So they override any other law or any other provision that is in contradiction to them.
Got it.
And then at a global level, the entire world, the state member states of the United Nations, they have adopted 70, 80 years ago in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, all of these principles. And then specialized organization, labor organizations like ILO, so Convention on Occupational Health and Safety. It's a very comprehensive document, and I think the best and also the unfortunate part is that entire world has ratified it. So it has a force of law, but it's somewhere out there lying in a set of paper, not being implemented, and that brings us to the most important part, the mindset, the culture.
Okay.
If you allow me, so
Sure.
I'll share a small.
You have an incident to share, right?
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
So it's a best practice, I think. So the aluminum corporation of America, Alcoa. It's it was one of the biggest companies in North America. Okay. This is a company that invented the smelting of aluminum. So anything from your spacecraft to your Coke cans or your window pans, so they're involved. So Alcoa is involved somewhere, whether in extraction or in production. So they have more than 35 operations in more than 35 huge, giant, typical giant North American corporate.
Of course.
So in late 80s and start of 90s, so their profits start plummeting. And so they were not as profitable, and there was panic. Their stocks value was crashing. So the board decided to bring in someone, a fresh face. They picked a career public servant known as, so he's quite a celebrity in occupational health and safety circle, Paul O'Neill.
Okay.
So the change that he brought in is known as the Ballad of Paul O'Neill.
Okay.
What he did was, so in the first opening, so if you've seen a lot of seasons and movies, so in the first general meeting with the shareholders and stakeholders.
Board meeting.
No, so it was more of a annual general meeting.
Okay.
So everybody was excited that here's the new guy and he will give us those cliche buzzwords like creating synergies and making adding value and so on and so forth. The only thing that he talked about is when he greeted everyone is that I'm going to focus on just one thing, and that is the safety and well-being of workers. Wow. And everybody was extremely surprised that it is important, but it should not be your
Why do you have to focus on it?
Yes, the topmost priority. Why is that? And everyone, so it was a disaster. That meeting was a disaster. So Wall Street was uncertain. The shareholders were uncertain. After 3-4 months, so he went on a global tour. Visiting all his facilities, and there was one message that he used to carry, that I will negotiate with you on everything. We can work together on anything. There is one thing that I will not be negotiating or discussing with you, that is compromise on safety and well-being of the workers.
Wonderful.
Naturally, everybody thought that this is given. Who would the unions have been fighting about it? The management would not have any objection because it directly results in loss of productivity and some loss of revenue. So everybody was fine. This is fine. Okay, fine. We won't be arguing about it. What they did not realize was that he was actually trying to instill these a fundamental change in habits, in corporate habits, because the best way the most efficient way, the most productive, the most profitable way of doing something is almost always the safest way of doing it.
Exactly.
Right.
So what he did was his plan included that if any injury or fatality happened in any of my facilities, the head of that unit, which the CEO of that unit, is going to report that directly to me within 24 hours. So they created back in that time
network.
seamless communication channels, and
Accountability.
what that does to. Then accountability. So these people, these heads are extremely busy people. So they kept their VPs on toes that if anything happened, you need to tell me, not just inform me, but also come up with suggestions that how to mitigate it.
Wonderful.
Because we are not going to report it. So they start digging deep. That why do accidents happen? What are the challenges in the processes?
So
in the
avoiding all
efficiency?
kinds of risks.
Yes, and avoiding all kind of risks. They were thinking that they were doing it just to close that particular incident, but actually they were doing a complete catharsis of their organization. And what happened at the grassroots level? So the loftiest, so the employee at the lowest, worker at the lowest level, he developed a communication channel with the highest executives.
Exactly.
Okay.
So not just accident or incidents, but also if they saw a problem, they started talking about it. So communication,
Right.
accountability,
Inclusion.
inclusion, and also this self-analysis, self-reflection. And within,
Amazing.
so on a closing note,
yeah.
sorry, I
Yes.
took a long time.
No problem.
In 10 years, so when Paul O'Neill stepped down, the net worth of the company was 5 times more.
Oh, wow.
And they were making record high profits. The shareholders were happy, and guess what? They were more safe. An aluminum company dealing with metal burning at 1500
Right,
Celsius.
welding
Yeah.
and whatnot.
It was more safe statistically than a software house.
Wow,
Wow.
that's wonderful. And
Amazing.
ladies and gentlemen, the sole
Amazing.
reason to share this success story with everyone out there was that if, in case you're an employer, make sure that you do that. Your net worth will be doubled in 10 years as well. And if you're an employee, make sure that you kind of have a conversation or a communication tool or a bridge so that you can actually reach out to your boss or to your employer so that you can probably say, sir, these are my concerns right on the table. If you can do something about it, that's wonderful. If you cannot, I probably need to look for another company. But sir, thank you very much for joining us. Professor Saab, thank you very much for joining us. Wonderful to have you. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we're actually going to go out and head out towards a short break. But not just that. I think at workplaces, women play a very important role as well.
Definitely, especially in leadership positions. And over the period of few years, we have seen how amazing results have been proven out, especially coming from women in leadership positions.
Yeah.
That is something, just a small anecdote though, that we will be taking further in the next segment. So what it is about, you have to stay tuned to find out.
Let's do this. Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome back to World This Morning, ladies and gentlemen, with Shazad Khan and Shaza Hashmi. It is, well, almost the mid of Ramadan. Yeah. I think we're halfway more to go as well towards the end of this month too. I hope it's going well for all of you. Before we did go out on a short break, Shazad, you were talking about, I think, representation on the basis of gender in workspaces.
Exactly, because ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about gender diversity, this is what something which research tells us that, wherever, there are companies where there's more gender diversity, those companies that tend to outperform 27% more times,
yes.
Other than other companies where gender diversity is very low. So there's this program, there's this initiative which we wanted to support over here on this platform, and you know that, this is something which we regularly do over here on our program, and thanks to our bosses as well who actually allow us to do such things over here at PTB World. So today we're actually going to be talking about Women of Board program as well. What does the program actually entail is something which we really need to be in conversation with our guests in the first place, and they will let us know. But before we do that, we actually have a small report to share about how COVID has actually had an impact
on the representation of women in workspaces.
Wow.
Did it, well, I think it was mostly negative. I was reading the research, but let's take a look at it.
As COVID-19 continues to affect lives and livelihoods around the world, the pandemic and its economic fallout are having a regressive effect on the gender equality. Reportedly, women's jobs are 1.8 times more vulnerable to this crisis than men's jobs. Women make up 39% of global employment but account for 54% of overall job losses. One reason for this greater effect on women is that the virus is significantly increasing the burden of unpaid care, which is disproportionately carried by women. This, among other factors, means that women's employment is dropping faster than average, even accounting for the fact that women and men work in different sectors. Millions of women are already supporting themselves and their families on meager wages before coronavirus mitigation lockdowns sent unemployment rates skyrocketing and millions of jobs disappeared. Working mothers were shouldering the majority of family caregiving responsibilities in the face of childcare system that is wholly inadequate for a society in which most parents work outside the home. Problems facing women have never been hidden, but they have been inconvenient to address because they are so entrenched in basic operations of the economy and the society.
And to talk about this, ladies and gentlemen, we're lucky that we've actually been joined by a development economist as well. She's got a long CV. She's been a member of different boards. She's been heading different institutions, a lot of them, that you cannot even remember a single name because there's so many. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're lucky that we've actually been joined by Ms. Aisha Khan, who happens to be a development economist as well and is actually working for Houshu Foundation. And her title is actually very interesting as well because she's actually heading the sustainability department, and she's actually heading it as well. Hello, ma'am. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. How are you?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for inviting me.
Wa alaikum assalam, and thank you very much for joining us. It's wonderful to have you. And alongside Ms. Aisha, ladies and gentlemen, we're lucky that we've actually been joined by CEO of HR Matrix as well. He happens to be Mr. Zahid Mubarak Saab. Hello, sir. Assalamu alaikum. Subha bakhair. How are you?
Assalamu alaikum. Perfectly all right. Thank you so much.
Wa alaikum assalam, sir. Thank you very much for joining us. First things first, I'll get this conversation started with you. So is it just the compliance or value addition?
Yeah, I think this is an important dialogue. We need to look at this issue in the context of the sustainability.
Okay.
Right? So at the highest possible level, you have the sustainable development goals. But then within the country, there are certain regulations. So Women for Board is an important topic for a regulator when they want to see that women should not be just part of the workforce, but they should also be part of the leadership team. Okay. So at the corporate level, you have a board of directors which is responsible for the oversight of everything that takes place in the organization. Yep. So this regulation, Companies Act 2017, it asks for having at least one woman at the board level, right?
Okay. But why, sir?
The important question is that why? We need to look around what is happening around the world, right? I mean, from a country standpoint, you see that in our population, they make 49%. So you can say that 50% of your talent is there, which is completely untapped.
True.
So if we do not capitalize, do not take advantage of their capabilities, we will be losing so many opportunities. Exactly. So in that context, it's very important to consider them as a source of innovation and help them toward the productivity and overall performance optimization of the organization. So this is what is the driver behind this thing.
All right, that is absolutely brilliant. While we do need to build up further in that, ma'am, I have to move on to you. First of all, I think you're an inspiration for a lot of women, especially when we're talking about this particular topic, because you are the women that we are talking about. Doesn't it bother you that the Act asks for one woman in corporate boards, and that is at least, or is it the maximum number, first of all? And 2017, isn't it just like so late for someone to come up with the idea?
Thank you for your question. At least is good enough
To start with.
I think when we speak of gender diversity, when we speak of gender mainstreaming across the world, it's quite challenging. We know about the glass ceilings, you know, that even women in developed countries hit.
Yes.
And I think it's a good starting point. It's not ideal, but when we're talking about attitudinal change, that comes about gradually.
That's
now, I am, just to share with you that I'm country director of Hashu Foundation,
Yes.
and I'm the chief sustainability officer of Hashu Group. I'm also on the board of PSL, which is Hashu Group.
Wow.
And I am the only woman over there.
Mashallah.
So it's extremely, it's about attitudinal change. Pakistan has, I think, more issues in terms of attitudes towards accepting women as professional equals.
Definitely.
Having said that, I think in developed countries, women are still not paid equal. Their pay is not equal to a man's
Ours
pay.
is.
But in many ways, I think Pakistan has an advantage, especially in urban areas, in you know, where we are in sort of at that educated women and educated men. There's more acceptance and more encouragement. We're lucky to have people like Zahid Saab who also support and promote that. There is a Women on Board organization. It was established in 2016 by Mr. Aftab Ahmed. So men are kind of proponents of encouraging and ensuring that women are on the board. In the development sector, and Hashu Foundation has been working for gender diversity and inclusion. We have women in leadership positions, in management positions. And Hashu Group also, I must say that our chairman, Mr. Murtaza Hashwani, he also encourages and supports, because this is my participation and my role, you know, as a CSO, that was during his time. So it's very challenging, the laws, the acts, but I think it's step in the right direction, and it takes time.
Exactly.
What is important is to create awareness, and what is equally important with diversity, with numbers, is the concept of inclusiveness, of bringing value, and of making the participation of women meaningful. I think that is much more challenging. That is, yeah.
Which is why this
The
is
main
something which I'm
struggle,
going to
yes.
ask you as well, because you know you happen to be the CSO, which happens to be the Chief Sustainability Officer. So for somebody
title.
who's actually a sustainability officer, and that to the Chief Sustainability Officer, what have you witnessed or what have you recorded, you know, over this span of time when you've been the sustainability officer, and that your, you know, chief executive has been of the mindset that, you know what, we really need to have people from different walks of life and, you know, kind of include gender diversity more and more as well. Have you seen that your organization has gone more towards sustainability, or do you think that it has brought back?
I feel it has. If I can tell you, I joined Hashu Foundation and the group 5 years ago. I joined as the Vice President Corporate Social Responsibility.
Wow.
So CSO is a relatively recent concept here in the hospitality industry. I think during COVID, when the hospitality industry being most affected by COVID, I think it shows the commitment of the strategic leadership of the towards sustainable development. I think maybe I've been very lucky that my colleagues have been very cooperative, you know, from the CFO to the COO. I must say, when we talk of finances and the CFO, it's always more challenging to have them view initiatives towards sustainable development, steps that we take internally as well as externally. Externally, to look, people will accept it, that, okay, we're working for the environment, we're working for economic sustainability or social sustainability of the organization. What is more challenging, I feel, is the internal, where you tell the people themselves that your attitude, your behavior, your the time that you give ensuring that your suppliers are maybe women-headed. The suppliers that are women-headed organizations, buy more from them, encourage them. So there's these baby steps that one needs to take, and sometimes it's difficult, but by and large, I feel that the organization I'm in, they're quite progressive and open to new ideas. So
I was going to say, because first of all, of course, there's no doubt in your capabilities, but your organization is one of the very renowned ones, especially in terms of its modernity in work ethics and the type of, way they lead the direction as well. So, well, you've been lucky, but I really hope, when you're talking in terms of workspaces, even the smaller ones, even the micro ones, we hope that those women get recognition, inshallah. But now moving on to you,
Can
Mr.
I just very quickly share with you that, like I said, I've been lucky here, but we support and invest. We have come across difficulties, and we support women. I mean, we've helped establish startups where we've trained women to be business leaders, entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And we fully appreciate the challenges. And when we go to the communities and in the field where we work, it's quite difficult. So it's not easy.
Yeah.
But in this particular sort of urban setup, it's relatively
easier.
easy.
And that makes sense, and I think it's very great of you to actually acknowledge. But now moving on to Mr. Zahid, please let us know in detail if can anyone sign up for this Women for Board program? For the people who have already, what is in it for them? Is there a dialogue going on? What will the entire conference entail?
Right. So in the first instance, I think I must clarify that this program is basically not we go for this Women for Board not just because we want to promote this thing. One of the key reason is that we need to capture the different perspectives which are required at the decision-making level, at the corporate level. So this program that we are organizing, and this good news that anybody can participate, but there's a certain prerequisite.
Yes.
Because for a board of directors, you expect the person should have exposure to at least in a C-suite level. Should be a direct report of the CEO, because the kind of exposure that is required, that's one of the prerequisites. And then we use our judgment, definitely in collaboration with some of the stakeholders, like Ms. Aisha is there. Yeah. So we, based on the market review, try to identify people who could be potential candidate, because if you see it from a statistical point of view, every company needs to have one woman at the board level. In Pakistan, there are 547 companies, and so far, out of the 3,000 board of directors, only 347 are women. Only 12%.
Hardly, yes.
Or just only 12%. So there's a huge shortfall. So to me, it's an indication that probably there is no qualified woman in the world. In Pakistan, that's not the case. We need to create an environment where, on one hand, there's a need for the pull effect. The board of directors who are in a position to accommodate people, they need to spot and identify. At the same time, the women also have to make themselves more visible. True. They need to market their skill set. They need to become more available to the organization who might need them. So we provide this opportunity for them, both of them, to connect with each other, have a dialogue. And a most important aspect, it's not just a compliance. That the government asks you to comply, there's an appetite, there's a value addition. Because there's a role modeling which is required, and we bring forward the successful companies like the Unilever, for example, is there. There are many other companies there. Pakistan Poverty Alleviation Fund is there, who are high on the Women for Board. The current is there. So we bring their leadership to let others know that what the real value addition. Are you doing it just purely from the regulation perspective, or there's a genuine benefit involved in it?
And is it an annual thing?
Yes. Sure, very quickly.
Value addition of what Zahid Saab is saying. when you asked earlier why women on board, and I think, well, the report, the SCCP report mentions that statistically they've shown that the return on equity when there are women on board, so there is a difference in the profitability of the organization. And I think once we create awareness around that, people will bring it in. It's not just for you know, decorative purposes.
Exactly. That's wonderful, and that's not what we want, and that's not how we want to come across that, you know, that including women into boards just for decorative purposes. I think that that's going to be a very wrong definition and direction as well. But, you know, one last thing before we wrap up, and that is, why one woman then? You know, why not give equal opportunities to everybody, you know, for people, you know, even men who've worked their entire lives to be, you know, at a post where, you know, they can probably be board member as well. And, you know, why do you, and do you think that, you know, that women can supersede just because of the fact that somebody came up with the concept that, hey, you know what, it's not just decorative, as ma'am said, but yes, you know, since we want this, this is our drive, let's just include somebody over somebody who was unmarried.
Okay. The point is that one is the minimum requirement. There's no cap on the upper side. Okay. Yeah, there are companies who even have, I think, more than 3 women as well. Just looking at some of the global statistics, like in Norway, every company has at least more than 3 women on the board level, right? So there's no limitation on you. Okay. But from the compliance perspective, from the regulatory perspective, at least 1 woman, that too is meant for the listed companies, so that companies can realize the value. Then eventually they can always expand. There's no binding on them for go on the upper side.
Okay, but that's wonderful. But thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for taking our time. Thank you very much, you know, because of the fact that somebody over here in Pakistan is at least talking about it. This is the need of the hour. We truly need kind of equal representation of both the genders as well. And yes, when people come together from different perspectives, from different walks of life, they bring some brilliant ideas together as well.
Definitely, and we hope and pray, and fingers crossed actually, that this will change the futuristic working scene of Pakistan in terms of gender.
Well, it has already.
Discriminate. Of course, at our workspace is different. We're talking generally in almost all the companies over here.
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any similar stories to share with us or any ideas or suggestions, please do write to us. We love your feedback on our social media pages, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, with the name of
Well, this morning on your television screens.
And the repeat of this show will be at
5 past midnight. Till the next time, look after yourselves. Remember us all in your prayers. Stay blessed. Follow all the SOPs. Don't step out.
Oh,
Bye-bye.
don't.
Good morning. Thank you very much.